I've had a message from YouTuber Hash4444 who wants to know a little bit about using broken chords in the left hand. Broken chords, or arpeggios, to give them their technical name. Yeah, I made another little video about arpeggios not very long ago, but in this one I'm just going to focus on using them as a left hand because it's a really useful little technique, especially if you're just starting out learning how to improvise and comp on the piano and you've just got a very basic understanding of chords, but you want to come up with accompaniments for your songs that sound really good. Let's have a look at how a broken chord left hand might work. Imagine we've got a very simple chord sequence: C, F, G, F, C, F, and it just repeats. Okay, we can create quite an effective, quite an expressive comp just doing something like this, using a broken chord in the left hand and a single block chord in the right. So as you can see, all we're doing is going up and down the chord, okay, the broken chord. Yeah, a chord of C, then a chord of F, then a chord of G. You can extend it. You don't have to play block chords in the right. You can do something more complicated. You can even extend your arpeggio up the piano using your right hand. Notice that I'm not playing the chords, necessarily playing the notes of the chords in any particular order. You can go straight up and straight down, but you can also do things like this. Okay, then just play around. And all you have to do is stick on the notes of the chord, and you can come up with very, quite expressive sounding comps, which work well with kind of slow ballady type numbers. There's a couple of things you need to watch out for. First of all, you do need to know your chords well, okay, and they need to fall confidently under your hand. I made a couple of slips when I was playing that, which shows you that although it's quite simple, it's quite difficult to do really precisely. And to sound good, a left-hand broken chord has got to be really precise because mistakes stand out a mile. Okay, it's a sort of thing you should find very, very easy if you've ever had classical piano lessons. Okay, but if you're learning piano from scratch, because you won't necessarily have the level of control in your hand that classical playing gives you, you might find it a little bit harder. Okay. The other thing is you need to watch out for the fingering. Okay, and this is where, again, if you have a background of piano lessons, you'll find it a bit easier because stuff like going over and under will come more naturally to you. Okay. You also need to think about the way you use the sustain pedal. Now, I'm going to be making a whole video about the sustain pedal fairly soon, so I'm not going to go into great detail about it here. But basically, you need to use your sustain pedal to stick the chords together when you're playing. If you don't use it, you end up sounding like this. Okay, a little bit staccato, a little bit jumpy, and especially if you're doing jumps like that. Yeah, if you use the sustain pedal, okay, it sticks together much more. Obviously, the amount you use the sustain pedal is going to be kind of governed by what you're doing in the right hand, because if you're playing a complex melody, say, because obviously you can put a melody over a left hand broken chord, then it might end up sounding mushy. But if you're just playing chords, then quite a lot of sustain can help you stick it all together. Just be a little bit careful if you are doing all your practice on a digital piano like mine, which is a fairly sort of mid-range to low-end digital piano, because it doesn't have what's called sympathetic resonance. Okay, very basically, again, I'll cover this in my pedalling video. On a real piano or on a high-end digital piano, you get what's called sympathetic resonance, whereby if you hold the sustain down, other strings will start vibrating in sympathy with the ones you're playing, and obviously, you know, a digital piano, a high-end digital piano or software piano will synthesize that. The problem with that is if you hold an arpeggio with a long sustain, okay, normally those sympathetic overtones you don't hear, they're below the level of hearing. But if you really go for a long old sustain, you would start to get overtones coming in from strings that aren't necessarily in tune with the chord. Okay, now that's absolutely not a problem if you're just practicing, but if you've done all your practice on a digital piano and then you go to a performance and suddenly you're playing a real piano, you could you could be in for a nasty surprise when you get these unwanted sympathetic resonances coming in. You would also find that if you started doing this on a real piano, especially a big grand piano with big long strings that sustain the note for a long time, it might become a bit much. It can be a little bit overpowering. You might have to just reel back a little bit. But done well, it can sound incredibly expressive. I mean, I was talking a little bit about arpeggios when I did my video on Adele not long ago. You know, you can make them as simple as this, just going up and down a chord, okay? But those left-hand broken chords are really useful, okay? But just be prepared to put in a little bit of practice, because although the theory is simple, and playing them in a fairly basic way is simple, getting the execution absolutely right, and it needs to be absolutely right, does take some practice. Okay? I hope that was useful. As usual, if you have any questions, stick them in the comment thread, send me a message. I might not be able to get back to you right away because I get a lot of questions, but I will come back to you eventually. And also, you know, if you're wanting to know about chords and things like that, check out How to Really Play the Piano, my book, which is $14.95 for the print edition, pounds that is, $9.95 for the digital edition. I'll include a link. Like I said, I'm going to put together a video on pedalling very soon. It's taking a little bit of kind of planning and thinking about to do. But if you are mystified by some of the ways the sustain pedal works, stick around for that, because it should be appearing probably within the next week. Okay, there we go.